So it's still just about day 2 of Vlog Everyday April. I'm not going to get this uploaded before midnight. It's taking me a while to do this one because I wanted to respond to the videos that have been put out the last couple of days by Philosophy Tube and H Bomber Guy that both deal with cartoons. And I wanted to do it by bringing in this chapter from a book that I really like called Matters of Gravity, which is a collection of essays by a media scholar called Scott Buchapman. Trying to kind of respond to both those videos and this book chapter all in one go in like previous takes of this video. And it's really not working. I think I would need like a proper half-hour video essay to do that properly, and that's not what I'm trying to do here at all. So instead, I think I'm going to very briefly summarize all three of these things and pretend that there's a chronology to it and that it all leads in a straight line to a destination, which isn't really true, but it will make for a much easier video, and I'm trying to do this easy. So this book chapter that I wanted to talk about is about comic books. But Buchapman is really interested in the 1990s as a particular historical moment where people's relationship to social order shifts. And he's using an anthropological lens, particularly the work of an anthropologist called Mary Douglas, to make the case that the supernatural bodies of superheroes are a site for dealing with the social order and the reader's relationship to it, and in particular the kind of moment of adolescence as a point where your relationship to the social order is being figured out. And that for him, comics, and I think cartoons as well, are kind of one area where culture allows us to get to grips with that. So he makes the case that in the mid-20th century, superheroes had this relationship to the social order that was kind of normative, like it was in line with broader power structures, and that the role of a superhero like Superman was to defend order. And he sees in the 90s this shifting, particularly with the X-Men, where the bodies of superheroes become a force of against the social order. The social order doesn't make sense to people anymore. And that comes out in the X-Men's bodies. What he kind of describes these bodies as like erupting, like weird shit is coming out of you because you don't fit. And the ways that you don't fit are reflected in the X-Men's bodies. So this relationship between bodies and the social order comes out in these two videos that came out this week as well. In the Philosophy Tube video, it's a joke that you have this pompous media academic who Buchapman kind of takes the mickey out of himself for as well, who is like looking at this like low culture shit from his childhood with an overwrought philosophical framework to kind of try and justify his enduring interest in it, when what's really at stake is that like he hasn't resolved his like adolescent issues and he's still kind of there. And in this Philosophy Tube video, as in like every Philosophy Tube video from the past year, I think. No, that's not fair. But a lot of Philosophy Tube videos, this being expressed in like quite a libidinal way. But the issue at hand is actually wider than sexuality. And it's something about the ways that we relate to our bodies and the bodies of others, with this discomfort that's overdetermined by the social order. Now, in the H-bomb video, I wanted to say that it's not really about bodies in the same way. It's not about bodies in the same way as the Philosophy Tube video or as the Buchapman chapter. But the more I thought about it, the more I realised that the point that H-Bomb is making kind of is about bodies. And there's two main ways that that comes out. One is the shift that he recognises in the status of the Autobot bodies, where they go from being fundamentally quite safe. They can't be destroyed. They just can get repurposed, and they're changeable and mutable. And then suddenly they become unsafe and destructible. There's another point that H-Bomb makes, which is that the villain in this particular Transformers movie represents a kind of nihilistic cosmic horror, because the motivation behind the villain's actions is not moral judgment, it's not evil intent, it's the physical necessity of the character's existence. It's in the materiality of the character's body that they need to feed by committing genocide, so they commit genocide. And they can't not do that and continue to exist. And he's talking about the moment in childhood when you realise that things aren't going to always go right, they're going to go wrong in ways that are completely incomprehensible, which is also one of the concerns that Buchanan is channeling through his reading of X-Men, that sometimes the social order is fucked up in ways that don't make sense, and you can't negotiate with it. There's just you in a body in a hostile world, and you've got to figure out what you do next. The Philosophy Tube video is kind of representing this position of being stuck, that your relationship to your physicality hasn't really changed since adolescence, and you're just kind of endlessly fascinated by this dialectic between oppositely sexed bodies. Buchanan starts to see a way out of the kind of 1990s image of the body as a site of social disorder, and that there's a senselessness to it. And I think H-Bomb actually finds a way out of it in a way that's quite admirable. So I guess I'll quickly look at the point in Buchanan where that happens. He looks at Doom Patrol very briefly toward the end of the chapter, and he says, foregoing angst for absurdism, Doom Patrol stories elevate and enhance the conventions of the genre to construct darkly liberating cut-ups that infect the reader's reality and open doors of illogical possibility. The traumatic body of the superhero now signifies a traumatized reality rather than an inadequate psyche. By shifting from kind of adolescent angst into embracing ludicrousness in a way that's almost more childlike, like embracing the childlike aspects of the comic book genre in order to go beyond angst into something more productive. We can actually reach maturity that way, and this role of nostalgia in actually getting us closer to adulthood rather than closer to childhood. H-Bomb reads something very interesting in Transformers, where there's this moment that even though a particular course of action that would have perhaps worked in the preceding Transformers cartoons and had been shown not to work earlier in the very same film, this kind of very childlike response of like, let's go and say hello to people and make friends with them to try and resolve this conflict. The characters decide that they're going to make this completely ludicrous decision in the hope that maybe it'll work this time, and then it does work. And as H-Bomb's describing this, it kind of reminds me of times that he's described the ambivalent political project that he's engaged with on YouTube in general, where I've kind of heard him say both that he's not trying to change people's minds through his videos, because that's not possible, but also that He knows his videos have changed people's minds. And constantly over-determining basically any video essayist's actions on YouTube right now is this knowledge that you're on a platform that is impossibly overrun with fascism. And the idea of like opposing it through YouTube videos is completely fucking ludicrous. But the choice to do that ludicrous thing is weirdly what takes us out of like nihilistic angst into something more productive. One of the things that comes up in the philosophy tube video quite early on, and that a lot is made of in a way that's meant to be ridiculous, is the Cartesian dualism between mind and body. Obviously, H-Bomb's video is, I think anyway, kind of making something out of that as well without calling it by name, where there's this contrast between moral actions that come from reason and actions that come from the body, which are kind of amoral and beyond good and evil. And in this like embracing of the absurd, I think there's this breaking of that dualism, and I think that's the way out of what H-Bomb calls the midlife crisis. What he describes as a midlife crisis, I kind of experienced as a quarter-life crisis. That was what I called it at the time anyway. But this kind of burden of, oh gosh, I'm not young anymore, and I should know what I'm doing by now, and I should be doing things that make sense, and like the stuff I'm doing doesn't make sense. The way out of it, for me at least, was literally becoming an artist and embracing the absurd. In a project that I'm just wrapping up, I feature an interview with a trans person that I did in Japan, where she describes the development of her art practice and says that after she transitioned, people started reading her work as surreal or surrealist. And she found this a bit confusing because it wasn't like her intent at all. And a mentor of hers, who was also trans, said that, well, as trans people, we live surreal lives. So it's kind of natural that people are going to read that in your work. And I think that kind of ties together the queerness that's going on in the comics that Bukatman is reading. And also, I think maybe in a low-key way, kind of subtly, in the latest H-Bomb video, particularly when he links all of this to Lovecraft, which he's linked to queerness in the past. There's something about this kind of troubling embodied relationship with social order that lends itself to absurdism and surrealism.